Join me in learning Chitas for Thursday, Parshas Vayeitzei, the fifth Torah reading, chapter 30, verse 28. Yesterday, we finished discussing about the birth of all the tribes, besides Binyamin, who has not yet been born. But at this point, when Yaakov sees that Yosef was born and believed that he would be the counterpart of Esav, and he would be guaranteed to be victorious against Esav, he tells Lavan that it's time for him to return home. Lavan understands and realizes that he was successful because of Yaakov, and thereby tries to convince Yaakov to stay. Today's Torah reading begins in this conversation. Today's Torah class is L'Refuah Shalema Avram ben Gilga. Verse 28. Vayomer, and Lavan says to Yaakov, Nokva scharcha alai, pick a price, tell me how much you want to get paid, v'ateina, and I'll give it to you. Rashi, Nokva, like the word, Parish Agrach, like the Targum says, tell me your price. Verse 29. Vayomer Elav, so Yaakov responds to Lavan and says, Ata yadaita, you surely know, that when I worked for you, and that when I had your cattle before you, there was very few. Rashi explains, this pasuk is connected to the pasuk that comes afterwards, telling us as that the accounting of how few cattle you had, that when I first came here and was working with you, how much was then, and how much is now, as he continues into the next verse and says that now you have plenty. Verse 30. For you had little before my arrival, and now it has increased substantially. And God blessed you because of me. And now, when will I have a chance to provide for my household as well? What does the word l'ragli mean? So Rashi explains, im ragli, from when I got here. Bishvil bias ragli, because of me coming here, meaning when I came here with my feet. Bas etzlacha bracha, when I started coming here, that's when the blessing came to you. Kemoi, we find a similar terminology used in the book of Exodus. Ha'amar sher beraglecha, the nation that's coming with you. La'amar sher beragli, or the nation that we find in Shaftim, the nation that came with you. Haboy mimi, which technically means that came with you. Rashi gam anochi levesi, meaning l'tzeirech beisi, when am I going to work for the benefit of my household as well? Ach shavei neisen l'tzarchi elabanai. Now the only ones that do for me are only my children. But I also have to be there with them, to help them, to support them, so that I should be able to earn some money as well. V'zehu gam, and that's why he says meaning gam, not only for them, but I should be joining them in making some money for myself so that I can support my family. Verse 31. Vayomer, so Yaakov said, so Lavan said to him, Lavan asked Yaakov, what should I give you? What are you requesting? So what are you asking for? Vayomer Yaakov, and Yaakov said, you know what? Don't give me anything outright. If you will do this one thing for me, Ashuva, I will continue, I will pasture your flock, and I will tend to them and protect them. Verse 32, what is the condition? And as you know, the most of the flock are solid black or brown, and therefore only minority have markings, whether they're speckled or different kinds of things of it. This way will be easily to spot what belongs to Yaakov, as he's about to explain to him. And he tells him as follows, Ever bechel tzeincha, let me pass through all your flock, hayom today, and hasar misham, remove from there, kol seh nokud v'tali, any sheep that is white speckled or white blotched, v'chol seh chum, or every solid black or every solid brown, b'ksavim, amongst the lamb, v'tolui v'nokud be'izim, and every white blotched or white speckled by the goat, v'hayaschari, and that will be my reward. That will be my payment. Everything else, you get to keep. Let's see what Rashi has to say in explaining about each one of these details. First of all, what does it mean, nakud? So Rashi explains to us the word nokud means menumar becharburis dakis, speckled with small little dots. That's why we know the vowels are called nekudais, like vowels, because they're little dots. Dotted. The next Rashi, vitolui, the word comes from the word loshen tloim, like different pieces, patches. So charburis rechaves, this is big blotches. Chum, like the Targum explains, shechum doimela odim. The color chum, which is brown, is compared and is very close to the color red. Adam dum. Adam, which is red, similar to blood. This is rush bilaz. That's what we find in the words of the Mishnah. Shechamtis v'nitza lavana. That a person, if he took wheat, that he thought it was going to be dark, was going to be brown, and he find out that it's white. When it talks about wheat, that the sun makes the wheat darker. And this will be my payment, meaning this will be my future payment. Those flock that are going to be born from now onward, nikudim with tluim, those that are spotted and speckled by the goats, ushchumim baksavim, and those that are blotched, and those and those that are burned, the color, those that are like brown by the flock, those shali will be mine. You shali. Oisan, however, oisan, those that are spotted and speckled and brown, sheyeshna achshav, that are there now, hafresh mehem, separate them from the rest of the sheep, v'hafkidem biyad banecha, and put them by your sons. Shalei Tamar, you should not say, you should not say, oh, those spotted and speckled, they were really mine, they were there from to begin with. Al Yidei Ascharim, because of my males, Shem Nekudim Utluyim, because they're spotted and speckled and blotched. They ladna the cave is to Gemasan, so therefore they gave birth to females just like them, and therefore Mikan ve'elech, from now on, all of them that you see from now on, those will be clear that are mine. Basically, what Yaakov was telling him, in order that he knew already that Lavan was a trickster, and he knew already his tricks, so he says, listen here, you take away all those that are spotted, speckled, you take them to the side, give them to your sons, I don't want them here, you shouldn't come along later and say that the reason why you have those spotted and speckles, they belong to me. Verse 33. Va'onsa bisikasi. This way, and sometime in the future, when you're going to come along, and I'm going to have to prove which one are mine, va'onsa bisikasi, my integrity will testify, be'yoy machar, in a later time, kisavi al schari, that when it comes to my payment, lefanecha, before you, kol asher nenu nakud v'toli be'izim, whatever is neither speckled nor blotched amongst the goats, v'chum baksavim, or brown amongst the sheep, ganuvu iti, is in my possession by theft. So you'll know which ones belong to me. Rashi, v'ansa bisitkasi. What does this mean? And my righteousness will testify later. Meaning, by this advice that I'm giving you now, this way, im techashdeini, if you're going to accuse me, shani noitom mishalcha klum, that I'm taking something from you, tan bitzidkasi, this will testify for me in the future, kitzav bitzidkasi, my righteousness v'soid al schari lefanecha, and this will tell you about my payment in front of you. Shalei timtza be'edri, you will not find in my flock. Ki'im, the only thing you will find, the ones that I separated for myself, the nekudim utluyim, the spotted and speckled, the chol of any goat and lamb, shetimtza bem she'eina nakadei talei, and anything that you'll find that is not spotted, speckled, or brown, b'yadua, this will be well known, shekanafti lecha, that was stolen from you, and b'gnevu shari etzli, and therefore it was through thievery that it's by me, and thereby the righteousness and who is right will prove that there's no way that you can deny it, because you see clearly the difference between the sheep and the goat. Verse 34, Vayomer Lavan, and Lavan reluctantly replies, Lo yehichit verecha, very well, let it be as you say. Rashi, Hein, Loshin, Kabbalas Dvarim. Hein means like to say, yes, sure, let it be. Lo yehichit verecha, Halavai, if only shetach bit bekach, if this is what you want, then so let it be. Very well, let it be as you say. And you cannot go back on what you suggested. Verse 35. Vayasar bayemahu, and he removed on that day esat yashim akudim, the he goats, the male goats that were ankle ringed, that had like rings around their ankles. That's what the word akudim. Vahatluyim, and in addition to all those blotched male goats, the eiskala izim, and all the goats, the hanekudes vahatluyos, the white speckled and the white blotched female goats, Kölasher loven boy, anything that had on it, had white on it, v'chol chumbak savim, or anything that had brown on the sheep, vayitem biyad banav, and he gave that to his sons. The sons of Lavan were going to separate them this way. He should be able to distinct. They should see clearly who belongs to whom. Rashi 35, Vayosar. Going back to what he spoke about before, Lavan bayemahu, Lavan was the one that removed. What did he remove? Hatyashim, the word tyashim means izim scharim, male goats. Kol asher Lavan boy, that means anything that had white in it. Kol asher hoitzachar barburis lavanis, if it had white patches on it, Lavan removed it from Yaakov. Not only the ones that were speckled and spotted clearly, Vayitin, what did he do with them? Lavan b'yad banav, Lavan gave it to his sons, that they should be the ones to deal with it, as we can see later on. Verse 36. Vayosam derech shleishas yamim, and Lavan now made a space of 3 days. He separated himself from Yaakov's flock and Lavan's flock, a 3-day journey. Beineyu ben Yaakov, between him and Yaakov. Yaakov Vayeitzei Lavan and Isaris. And Yaakov continued to pasturing the rest of Lavan's flock. As we see in verse 36. Verse 36, Rashi, Hanesaris, what does it mean, the leftover ones? Hara'ues, the weak ones. Shaben, Hacholes, the sick ones. Va'akares, and those that were barren, she'enan, ela shiarin, these were the leftovers from the flock, and he knew that they weren't going to be meeting full of or anything. Oisan masar Yaakov, he gave those, Lavan gave those to Yaakov. And why did he give those to Yaakov? Because of course, as Lavan in his wicked ways tried to minimize the amount of reward that he was going to give him, so he gave him all those weaker ones that they shouldn't have any possibility of producing any offspring of his payment that he was going to give him. Verse 37. Vayikach leYaakov makal livneh. Now Yaakov, since Lavan left him no way that genetically that his goats can produce anything, so Yaakov came up with the following method to induce the goats under his care that they should be able to create and have more of their kinds of goats. So what Yaakov did was, Vayikach leYaakov, Yaakov took a sticks. What kind of sticks? Livna of hazel, lach, veluz va'armin. He took fresh aspen sticks, which were hazel sticks, and chestnut sticks, va'armin, and chestnut sticks, vayifatzel ben psolis, and he peeled white stripes in them, machsef halavan asher la'maklis, that you were able to expose the white that was on the sticks. So he used these aspen, hazel, and chestnut sticks, peeled them, so you should be able to see the white that was underneath the bark. Rashi, what kind of sticks? So Rashi tells us these types of sticks, and he translates for us the sticks. And he says as follows. Maka livna, aspen sticks. Eitzu, it's a type of wood. Ushmoy livna, and its name is livna. Under oaks and livna. Like it says in the pasuk, tachas elon v'livna, under the oak and the livna. So it's a type of tree which was called livna. And I say, livna eit shekeren trinbila. I believe that the livna is a type of wood which is called trinbila, and in Old French it's called trenbul, which today we would call aspen. Shahu eit lavan, which was white. Lach, this is not another kind of tree, but he's telling you you took a branch of the tree kishurotuv when it was moist. Luz, What is he telling us? This is not a description of the wood, but this is another kind of tree. Luz is hazel. The oid loachach, he took another thing. Maka luz, another stick of hazel. It's a tree that grows on its small little nuts, which we would call hazelnuts today. In Old French, it's called coldre. Armoin, Rashi translates also like chestnut in Old French, chestnut in Old French. Pitzalis, what does the word pitzalis mean? Kilufim kilufim. He peeled it from the sides of the stick. Shaya oiseu menumer. He made it look as if it was streaked. It had stripes on it. And this way, you saw the different stripes. The purpose of it was, and he explains as follows. Machsef alavan. What does it mean, the word machsef alavan? The word machsef means gilui haloiben. He revealed the white shalamakla of the stick. That means by taking off the peel of the stick, you were then able to see the white on the bottom of the stick. When you would peel it, then you would be able to see the white, which was there in the place where it was peeled. So you had stripes, you had the darkness, you had the peel, you had the actual peel that was remaining, and then the peel that was taken off, which gave you then stripes on those sticks. So you had three kinds of sticks. You had on the sticks that he peeled them as well, and you were able to see the white. We continue in the verse 38. What did he do with these sticks? He then displayed these sticks, asher pitzel, that he had peeled, barahatim. He placed them in the troughs of water, b'shikasa samayim, where the water would be running through, asher tavayna atzayin, that the sheep would come there, lishtais, to drink. L'noichach hatzayin, he would put them against where facing the animals. Once we put the sticks in the troughs, which were where the water would come in from, and while the sheep or goat were there drinking, they would be facing it. And this way they mated with the he-goats, with the male goats, when they came to drink. Let's see Rashi. Rashi explains what happened here. Vayeitzei. What does the word vayeitzei mean? Like the Unclus translates, v'doitz lashon tchivo neitza, that he put it into something strong, that it would stay there. Hu b'lashon Arami, in the Aramaic language, means that you stick something into the ground. V'harbe yesh b'Talmud, we find this a lot of times in the Talmud. Dotzo shlofa, if a person even Shabbos, if a person stuck something in the ground and then pulled it out of the ground. Dots be'midei, if a person stuck something else, we find it in Chulin. Dotza, the otza, ela mekatzer slashena, but over here the Unclus was making it short, but we find this your terminology of da'itz as in the terminology of sticking something into the ground. Parahatim, these are the troughs which the water would run through. B'mrutzas hamayim, the water would comfort. B'brechas hamayim, in like these little pools, hasuyis ba'aretz, that were made in the ground. L'hashkish hamatzayin, that the sheep would come to drink from there. Asher tavayna, what that the sheep would come to drink, he put it facing them. But ahatim, he put it in these troughs. Asher tavayna atzayin lishtis, that the sheep would come drink. Sham hitzig hamaklis, over there is where he placed the sticks. L'neichach atzayin, facing the sheep. So when the sheep would come drink, they would be looking at those sticks that Yaakov placed in the water. Vayechamna, looking at those sticks caused the females to become pregnant. Habehema reyes hamakles, once the animals saw the sticks that were striped, v'hinir sas lachidel, and it would become all of a sudden bewildered and shaken because it sees something weird in the water, and because of that, it would shake them and cause them to mate. And therefore the male goat would then mate with the female goat, and it would then bring out children of what it looked like while it was in the water. And this is Rabbi Shemer. Rabbi Shia says, according to Rabbi Oisheh, he says this in itself was a miraculous event, that the females did not need the males to mate, and it was just from the water itself that they caused them to have the children, caused them to have that their animals that came from them looked like what they saw in the water. Verse 39. Vayechemu atzoin el hamaklis. The animals mated at the sight of seeing the sticks. Vatiladna atzoin, and because of that, they gave birth to sheep, to akudim, to ankle-ringed, nikudim, spotted, white-speckled, utluyim, and white-blotched. Verse 39, what does it mean, el hamaklis, to the sticks? Maris hamaklis, by seeing these sticks, that's what caused them to have children and sheep that way. Akudim, the word akudim means mishunim. They look different, meaning that there was something tied around their ankle that looks like they had a circle there. By the place where they would tie them, when they would tie sheep, when they wanted to slaughter them, they would tie them by their ankles. So therefore he says, Karsula Yedev Ragleim, by the ankles of their legs and their feet. That's where you saw these rings. Many want to explain Kabbalistically of why specifically these three different types of wood that he used: aspen, hazel, and chestnut. The combination of these different colored type of sticks symbolized that Yaakov, who was the midah of Tiferes, of synthesis, while Avram was Chachma, Chesed, and Yitzchak was Gvura, Yaakov symbolized synthesis, bringing the two together. And therefore he drew by the divine intellect of these emotions, and is explained in Kabbalah and in Chassidus, that by Yaakov making the stripes on the sticks, this was his way of putting on tefillin, because he was able to achieve those levels spiritually through the Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes, and bringing it down into and accomplishing the same spiritual manifestation that tefillin could do. However, the difference was that tefillin, the item, became holy itself. Because this was before the giving of the Torah, the actual sticks did not become holy. The Torah now continues with verse 40. Vahaksavim, and the sheep. Hifrid Yaakov separated those white marked sheep. Vayitim pnei tzein el akud vel kolchum b'tzein lavan. And what Yaakov did was he had the goat flock face, the white ankle ringed sheep, and then also as well all the brown amongst those flock. That he put v'cholchum b'tzein lavan, and all the brown ones in the sheep of Lavan. Vayoshes le'adorim ad levadai, and he made them flocks, herds on their own, herds of sheep on their own. V'leishasam al tzeim Lavan, and did not let them intermingle with the rest of Lavan sheep. So what Yaakov did was those that were born to him with the circles and the spots he kept for himself, and then he made separate herds for Lavan as well, as we'll see. Rashi explains. V'aksavim hifrid Yaakov. So Rashi tells us, from those sheep, Yaakov took for himself only the brown ones. Those that were born with the stripes, with the rings on their ankles, nekudim, or the spotted, or the blotched. He separated them and gave them for himself. Also, his son Eder made herds of them on their own. And he took those herds, ha'akud, of those that were ringed, lifnei atzein, before the other ones, and therefore the other sheep saw as the sheep passed by before them. This way they will be able to give birth to those similar. Therefore he says that he put the face of the sheep towards the ones that had the rings around them, that the face of the sheep were looking and staring el akudim, on those that had the rings, and so too on the spotted and the blotched. And on all of the brown goats that he found amongst Lavan's sheep, meaning that even those that he separated in herds on their own, he would let them walk in front of the other sheep, so when the sheep saw them, they would mate and they would see them, and they would then have the same idea and have the same what they saw. Like I explained, that he made them in herds, so they should have an effect on those that see them, and this way they should be able to mate like them. Verse 41. And it would be, the plan was that whenever the early ones, the early bearing animals were in the heat, would get warm, the some Yaakov v'samaklis, then Yaakov would put the sticks in the water, in front of the sheep, or hotem, in the troughs of water, so they should be able to mate b'maklis by seeing the sticks. Rashi, what does it mean, hamikusharis? Usually the word mukusher means to tie, but over here it means amechiris, the ones that would come, that they were early, they would breed early, they would be the early bearing. I don't have any other example in the Bimikra Lichiachalav to prove my point that this is what it means. Or Menachem Chibre, Menachem, which is referring over here to, we mentioned a few days ago about Menachem ben Sruk, who was a grammar and translator of many words in the Torah. He was Rashi's teacher when it came to these ideas, and he says as follows: he found some words which are similar to it. Im Achitefel Bekoishrim, in the book of Samuel, where it talks about Achitofel, that he was found amongst those that were the first to rebel against David. Kesher Amitz, and it was a strong knot, meaning that those that were connected with the sheep at an early stage, so they should conceive and give birth early. Verse 42. However, but he did not place them when the late-bearing animals came along. And therefore the later-born offspring became Lavans, because since they did not have any stripes or speckled on them, and the early-born offspring became Yaakov's. What does the word ha'atif mean? So Rashi explains, Loshin ichor. It means that they were the ones that were born later. Ketakume ubalakishus. Menachem, and Menachem Esruk explains, Chibrei im hamachalatzis v'matofis loshin atifas ksus. It comes from as if somebody is wearing a garment. It's talking about those that were older, they were late bearing, and therefore they were so enclosed in their wool and in their skin and their hide that they had no interest in mating with the males. And because of that, they weren't able to become pregnant and have flock from them as well. Verse 43. And thus the man became exceedingly prosperous. And he owned lots of sheep, ushvachis, avodim, ugmalis, bondswomen, bondsmen, camels, and donkeys. Verse 43, Rashi, tzoyin rabbis. Why does it use the terminology so many sheep and in a female terminology? To tell us, because his sheep would reproduce more than any other sheep. How did he have all these different things if he only was a shepherd? Where did he get bondswomen, slaves, camels, donkeys? So it says, because the sheep were young and they were healthy and they were reproducing, he was able to sell his sheep for a lot of money. And therefore he was able to buy with it camels, donkeys, bondswomen, and servants and all the good stuff that he had with him. Verse 30, we're now in chapter 31, verse 1. And now the Yaakov heard that what was being said by Lavan's son, and he heard the children of Lavan saying, Yaakov took everything that belonged to our father, and from our father's property, he amassed this great wealth. Asa, Rashi, Kines, he gathered, he was able to amass. That he made an arm and he killed Amalek. Verse 2. Yaakov's bnei Lavan, and Yaakov saw the face of Lavan, and his attitude towards him was not the same, like it was yesterday or the day before. Verse 3. Yaakov, and God comes to Yaakov and tells him, it's time for you to return to your father's land. The place you were born, and I will be with you. Shuv Eretz Avisecha, Rashi says, and Visham Eye Imach. Only when you go back to your father's land will I be with you, and my divine presence will be with you. But while you're still here with love and the impurity, my divine presence cannot rest on you. Verse 4. Yishlach Yaakov, and Yaakov sent Vayikra Rachel. He summoned Rachel, Leah, when they were by the Hasadab to the field, El Tzene, to where his flock was. Vayikra Rachel Leah, verse 4. Rachel first to Rachel. and only afterwards to Leah. Because because Rachel was his main wife. Because only because of Rachel did Yaakov have this work relationship with Lavan. Even the children of Leah agreed. Agreed. Boaz and his rabbinic tribunal were from the tribe of Yehuda, which is from Leah. They would say that the words that they used to say, Kirachel ukeleya, like Rachel and Leah, Sharbanu Shneim, that they both built up the home. Iktima Rachel and Leah, they were the ones that put Rachel before Leah. They recognized that Rachel was the one that was Yaakov's original wife or main wife, which was initially. Verse 5. Vayomer lahen, and he said to them, Roya anoichi es pnei avicha, and I see your father's face and his attitude. Ki einenu elei, it's not the same. Kitmil shishim, like it was yesterday, shilshem, or the day before. Ve'elekei avi hayimadi. But the God of my father has been with me all these time. Va'ateino yadaten, and you know. Ki bekol koichi avadit es avicha, that I served your father with all my heart, with all my power. Verse 7. Va'avichen heiselbi, your father yet deceived me. Vehechlif es maskurti, changed my conditions of payment. Aseres moinim, 100 times. But God did not allow him to harm me. Aseres moinim, what does it mean? 100 times? But the word aseres generally uses 10. Ein moinim pochas me'asara, we don't count less than 10. Moinim loshen schum klal cheshbon. The word moinim is giving you the total of the tally of, that means it's not a singular number 10, but it's telling you a large amount of tens. Ve'ina serious, which is 10 times 10, and therefore it's 100. Which is teaching us that he changed his conditions, meya pa'amim, 100 times of what they first decided on and how it was going to be. It was changed, and now he gives them examples of how it changed. For example, if he would say, "Nekudim yizcharecha," your payment will be with the speckled ones. The yolden kolatzein nekudim. Then all the animals would produce speckled offspring. But if you would say, Akudim yizcharecha, your payment will be like the ankle-ringed ones, then all the animals would produce ankle-ringed offspring. Verse 9. And it was this way that Hashem was able to redeem your father's livestock, and thereby giving them to me. How did that happen? And he explains. And it happened when it was that recently when your father told me what the payment was going to be. So at that time when the sheep were, and I looked up during the time of the mating season, and I looked up with my eyes, and I saw in a dream, and there were those, and the bucks were mounting on the sheep. The akudim, and they were coming out ankle-ringed, nekudim, spotted, brudim, and belted, white-belted. What does he mean by this? So Rashi explains what was going on here as follows. 10. Even though Lavan separated all of them, Lavan took away any of them, that none of them should be able to mate and become pregnant of any of the sheep similar to it, because that was the deal that he made, and I would get the spotted and the speckled. Still in all, I saw in the dream that the angels were bringing them from the herds of Lavan, bringing it to mind that they should be able to give birth and be able to have all these different types of sheep. Ubrudin, what does the word brudin mean? Kitargume patzichin, paisher, chut shaloivin, it was belted. It looked like there was a strap of white makif, which was surrounding a skufe, which would wrap around the body. Savi v'char barburis, and there were patches. Shaloi were white. Psuchom ufaleshes mezualzu, and they were going from side to side. There was no separation between the two of them. And Rashi notes, "Ve'enli lahavi eid min hamikra." I don't have an example where I can tell you where this is coming from, but this is the way he looked, that it was a continuous stripe that would go around like a belted way, that you were able to see the white that was there on the animal. That's what the word brudim means. Verse number 11. And the angel told me, and in that same dream, the angel called to me and said, And in the same dream, the angel called me and said, Yaakov, Yaakov. And I replied, here I am. Verse 12. And he said, Son, raise your eyes, and see all these bucks that are mounting. That are coming up, that are mounting on the goats, on the she-goats. And look at them, akudim, they're ankle ringed. Nekudim, they're studded. Ubrudim, and they are belted. I see everything that Lavan has done to you. Hakel, base scale. What does this mean? So he says as follows: Kamoi, Kale, base scale. The God in base scale, the God that revealed to you in base scale. A hey, you say, why does it have a hey? Hakel. This is the usual concept of how the verse is written. That you are coming to the land of Canaan. That you anointed there. I'm sorry, we didn't do that verse yet. We'll go into the verse 13. I am the God from Beis Kel that you consecrated there a monument. That you vowed to me, a vow. Now, it is time for you to leave the land, leave this land, and return to the land that you were born. Hakel Beis Kel, as we said before, Kale Beis Kel is the extra hey. This is the way the pasuk usually puts it, putting ha'aretz Canaan. Mashachta sham, loshen ribu yegedula, meaning the one that you anointed, for example, like the one you anointed for to be the king. Kach, so too over here he's using Vayeitzei shemal harasha, you anointed oil on its head. Lias meshuchal mizbeach, you anointed it that it should be something worthy, that it should be an altar to bring a sacrifice. You made a promise. You got to keep to your promise. Shamarta, you said Yebes will be a place for God. Shatakriv Shem Karbanis, that you're going to bring sacrifices. Now it's time for you to go back to your homeland and bring the sacrifices that you promised. Vatan Rachel Valeya, verse 14. And Rachel and Leah responded to Yaakov, Vatomer Leah, and they told him, do we even still have a share in the inheritance of our father? Verse 14. Rashi, they're asking, why should we even hold you back from going back? Are we even going to get something as the inheritance amongst the males now that there are boys? Initially, there were no boys. Now there are boys around. We're not going to get anything from this. There's nothing worth for us to wait around. 15. Why we were even considered to be him as strangers. Kimacharanu, he sold us off to you in exchange of 14 years of labor. And he spent our wage money for himself. He did give nothing. You're managing his flock. He took it for himself. We have nothing from it. Rashi, not only are now we can have an inheritance, even when a person usually gives a dowry, live nice off to his daughters. When they got married, he treated us like strangers. He sold us to you. You worked for us for 14 years. And he only gave you for what you worked. That's where you got money. He even withheld the money that you were supposed to get. And we got nothing. Verse 16. All the things that belong, all the wealth that God is saving, Me'avinu, from our father, Lanu, it belongs to us. The thing that belongs to us and to our children, and to our children, the thing that belongs to us and our children is the wealth that Hashem has given you. Now, anything that God tells you, I say, we will do. What does this mean? Rashi explains, if we look over here, the word ki, as we mentioned many times, ki can be many different things. In this case, it means but. From our father we have nothing. But what do we have? He's telling Baruch what God saved. What he saved that you have, the wealth, that's what we have. Hitzil, save, Lashon Hifresh, he separated. Anytime we find the word Hatzala, to save, in the verse, Lashon Hafresha means to separate aside, as it says, that he separates him from the enemy and from the bad. This concludes the Torah reading for Thursday, Parshas Vayeitzei.